The topic that is given to me today is understanding quantitative research. Let us see different aspects of the quantitative research. First aspect relates to the philosophical foundation of this quantitative research. Why quantitative only? Why do we have to quantify everything? And what is the need from where it has come? And what is the foundation on which this idea of performing quantitative research rests? That is a question that we must answer first. You see, the idea of quantitative research can be attributed to Galileo. Galileo was first person who said that if we want to study the phenomena, the universe, we should study it in the language in which it has been written. And he said that the universe is written in the language of mathematics. Before Galileo, the universe was studied in terms of the religious texts, the mental projections, or whatever was, so to say, stated by the religious leaders. Only that. But he said, no, this is not the right way. Conjecturing, guessing, and then divinity, etc. These are the things which, or consciousness for that matter, are not the relevant methods, is not the relevant language for understanding the reality out there. And he said that the correct language for this is the mathematics. And for this, he made a statement, and a very important statement he made. And the statement was that every phenomena in the world has 4 characteristics. And these are size, shape, location, and motion. And these all can be quantified. And every phenomenon should be studied with respect to this only. And he said that issues which cannot be measured, they are beyond the purview of science. So, there is an example that is given by him. The example is, for example, say there is a tree in the forest. And if there is a tree in the forest and it falls, what will happen? So one thing is, when it falls, there will be motion. It will move down like this. Second thing will be that there will be vibrations created by it. Both of these can be measured. The third thing that comes to the mind of the listener of this example would be, what about sound? Now, Galileo says, science will not study sound because sound is an issue of what he calls soul. If the human being is not there, there is no sound. There has to be existence of an ear for the sound to be heard. By itself, the falling of the tree or the movement of tree does not make a sound. Sound will occur only when human being is there. So, smell, the issues relating to smell, touch, sound, and taste. These issues, Galileo said, were the issues of soul. He used the word soul. We can say human being. When the human being is present, then these can be thought of. Otherwise, not. So, actually, Galileo's vision of reality was the existence of an objective reality. For example, a tree exists there, out there. It exists in the forest, in the universe, wherever it exists irrespective of how it is perceived. That is, how it will be interpreted by the mind. Irrespective of that, there is an objective reality. So similarly, Galileo said that all phenomena have to be studied with respect to four things, that is size, shape, motion, and location. And they must be expressed in terms of a mathematical equation. And if something can be expressed in terms of mathematical equation, then only we would say that we have actually studied that particular phenomenon. From here started the idea of what we call today the quantitative research. Quantitative research has its origin in Galileo's ideas, therefore. And these ideas were expanded further. All right. And these ideas took what we call the epistemological stance. Now, what do we mean by epistemological stance or epistemology? Epistemology is, in a very simple word, is the science of knowing. How do we know? Now, in very simple words, if I have to explain what epistemology is, we would say that epistemology is concerned with what is acceptable knowledge. So you create a knowledge through your study. Will that knowledge be acceptable or that knowledge will not be acceptable? That is a question, that is an issue. Okay. So now the knowledge which follows a particular procedure which is acceptable to the scholars, to the community of scientists, only that knowledge would be acceptable. You know, in general, we human beings, actually keep creating knowledge every minute. Keep creating knowledge means that we keep making generalizations. We make these statements like, this person is good, that person is bad. We say, for example, that say Europeans are very systematic people. Indians in general are not rule-following people. Now, these statements are statements of generalization. But can they be the acceptable knowledge? Obviously not. They cannot be considered acceptable knowledge. Reason being that for any theory, for any statement to qualify for being knowledge, it must follow a certain procedure. Okay. So now there are various ways in which there are various schools of thought regarding what can be considered as acceptable knowledge. Okay. So one of the schools of thought is known as positivism. And what is positivism? Positivism is that school of thought which focuses on two important things, two major pillars, and there are some associated principles. Two major pillars are measurement and observation. That is, when we follow, according to this particular philosophy, since the reality is an objective reality, and let me add a phrase, reality is objective reality independent of mind. What do I mean by saying a reality which is objective reality independent of mind? By this, I mean to say that irrespective of how a particular mind, a particular human being or group of human beings will interpret a particular phenomenon, irrespective of that, there is an objective reality which exists out there. So, for example, you make a statement, I want to know whether there is a relationship between, say, interpersonal trust and performance. Does there exist a relationship between the presence of women directors and productivity of a company? Now, these phenomena, as I have stated, the relationship between trust and performance, relationship between presence of women in the on the boards of director and productivity of the company. Now, these phenomena exist. They exist objectively, irrespective of whether somebody observes them or somebody does not observe them. It is the job of the scientist to go and find out and quantify this relationship clearly. That is what the thing is. So the starting point here for studying this particular phenomenon will be the measurement. Actually, in this school of thought, or in this epistemological stance called positivism, we make a very strong assertion. We say something which cannot be measured does not exist. If, for example, say you want to study, say the relationship between employee engagement and employee satisfaction, job satisfaction. So you want to study this. Now, for the purposes of studying this, what do? We would expect, according to this school of thought, our starting point will be that your idea of employee engagement must be measured first. And if you say, no, I cannot measure it, well, in that case, we would say there is nothing like employee engagement which exists. So first and foremost point of positivism is, we say, measurement. It must be measured. If something cannot be measured, we say it does not exist as far as positivism is concerned, or as far as this branch of knowledge of knowing is concerned. I hope I am able to put my point across to you very clearly. So first and foremost thing is measurement. And second thing is, as we would say, that is observation. That is, we must be able to observe the phenomenon. Observe the phenomenon in a very objective way, which means that there has to be a difference between the observer and observed. Observer and observed should not be the same. Because if the observer and observed are the same, then they cannot be, measurement, observation cannot be objective. Okay, we are saying, as I said right in the beginning, that the reality exists irrespective of the mind, irrespective of the person who interprets it. Whether somebody interprets the reality or somebody does not interpret the reality, it does not matter. It exists there on its own, irrespective of anybody even observing it. So we have to observe the reality in a very, very objective manner. And for this, as I said just now, there are two cornerstones of this. One is measurement and the other is observation. So what positivism says? Positivism says that knowledge can be created, accepted knowledge can be created, generated, when we are able to follow these two things, measurement and observation. And how observation will be made? It will be made in such a manner that there is a distance, there is a difference between observer and observed. For example, you want to find out how the prisoners in a prison live and what kind of norms they develop among themselves in their interactions. So one way is that you observe them from a distance, or maybe you can observe them indirectly by creating a questionnaire, giving it to them and having them filled in. And another way is that you go there in connivance with the authorities or in agreement with the authorities, you also enter the prison as one of them. And you live with them and then you write everything about them. Now, this particular method, the second method, where the researcher goes inside the prison, lives with them, and then writes down his observations over there about them. This particular method in positivism will not be acceptable. Why? Because this method is subjective. Subjective in the sense, it is the subjective observation of the researcher about the world of observed. Now, this method in sociology is acceptable in qualitative research. We call it ethnography. But that is entirely a different school of thought. In positivism, this is not acceptable. What is acceptable is that observer and observed should be different. And data collection should be in a very objective manner. Objective manner in the sense that there should be no scope for the personal bias and prejudice of the researcher to enter the data collection process. And how it can be stopped, how it can be ensured? It can be ensured by, say, developing a questionnaire. For example, you want to study relationship between employee engagement efforts by the company and job satisfaction of the employees. Now, we have to observe this, observe it in an objective manner. We have to observe it in an objective manner. At the same time, we must fulfill the condition of being able to measure the job satisfaction also. So what should we do? We must develop a method to be able to develop job satisfaction. And for this, what we do, we first define what job satisfaction is. What will be the constituents of job satisfaction, which we call dimensions. And then we write statements about each dimension. And those statements are then validated, verified through our mathematical concepts of reliability, validity, different type of validities are there, and so on. We standardize the questionnaire, which we call technically instrument. And we then validate that it will be able to observe or capture job satisfaction in a very objective manner by using such statistics as, say, Cronbach alpha. We are able to do that. We also try to measure different type of validity, such as concurrent validity, convergent validity, and so on. And then we say that our statement, our instrument has got completely standardized. And using that that particular instrument or that questionnaire, we approach our subjects and we get their ratings regarding their experience or feelings about the job satisfaction. Also, we gather data from them in the similar way by developing an instrument on employee engagement. And we collect data even on employee engagement. And once we do that, once that particular task is performed, then we arrive at the correlation between the two. We can also run the regression, which is also a refined form of correlation. Now, these are three aspects of positivism, which are very, very important: measurement, observation, and third thing, that observation and measurement must be in a very objective manner. Actually, a few more things I can add to this particular stance. That is that there should be replicability. That is, we should be able to replicate that particular study. That is, there should be a scope for the testability of whatever you are trying to generalize. In quantitative research, the focus is, dear friends, or through positivism, as I say, philosophical stances of positivism. So basically, here we would say that not only should you be able to measure, observe objectively, but also you should be able to provide scope for testability, repeatability. If you are not able to do that, then our task will not be complete. So I would rather say, dear friends, that as far as positivism is concerned, positivism, we would say, is a epistemological position. Now, understand the word epistemological position. Epistemological position, epistemology is concerned with what is acceptable knowledge. A position through which, a method through which we arrive at the acceptable knowledge. Now, positivism says that we should focus on 5 things. Number 1, measurement. Number 2, objective observation. Number 3, difference between observer and observed. Number 4, testability. Number 5, repeatability. These things should be there. Technically, positivism is an epistemological position that advocates the application of methods of natural science to social reality. That is, whatever we are studying in the social sciences, we should study it with the help of the same methods that we are using for the purposes of studying the natural sciences. And how do we study the natural sciences? We study natural sciences, as Galileo said. In the language, we study the natural sciences in the language in which the universe is written. And universe is written in the language of mathematics. And for mathematics, we should be able to express things through equations. For writing the things in the form of equations, we must be able to do two things very clearly. One is measurement and the other is observation. Again and again, I am coming to the same point. So positivism is concerned with now a few things I would like to talk about phenomenism, about positivism. What are the features of positivism and how these features lead to quantitative analysis? Number one, positivism says that all phenomena and therefore all knowledge must be confirmed by senses. Please note this. All phenomena and all knowledge should be confirmed by senses, which means what? We should be able to observe it with the help of the five senses that we have as humans. This is called principle of phenomenalism. That is all. If something cannot be understood, observed, experienced through five senses, we would say it does not exist. Number two, second point. In positivism, second point is the purpose of theory is to generate hypotheses that can be tested. Please understand. Let me explain this again. The purpose of theory is to generate hypotheses that can be tested. And with the help of these tests of hypotheses, we should be able to understand the laws which are governing the functioning of a phenomenon. Say, for example, you are working on the phenomenon of organizational productivity. Okay. Now, what are the laws? Our task is, what are the laws which govern the productivity of an organization or of a business operation? Now, for the purposes of generating those laws, we should be able to form certain hypotheses. And we should be able to form such hypotheses that can be actually tested. And based on the test of those hypotheses only, we should be able to find out and generate those laws. So this is known as principle of deductivism. Now, please notice two principles I have told you. Number one, I told you just now, the principle of phenomenalism. What is that principle of phenomenalism? The principle of phenomenalism is that all phenomena and hence knowledge must be confirmed by senses that can genuinely be warranted as knowledge. All right, our senses must confirm it. Number two, if we want to find out the laws that govern a particular phenomenon, then we should be able to, number one, generate hypotheses regarding that particular phenomenon and test those hypotheses. And by testing those hypotheses, we should be able to deduce the explanation of laws which assess the phenomenon or which explain the functioning of the phenomenon. Third thing, knowledge can be arrived at by gathering facts. And based on that, those facts, from the facts also, by organizing the facts in a proper manner, by analyzing the facts in an appropriate manner, we can arrive at the knowledge. We call it principle of inductivism. So even induction, deduction, and induction are two ways of generating the knowledge. And fourth point is very important, that we should conduct our study in such a manner that it is value free. Value free means that there should be no biases. The likes and dislikes and right and wrong as defined by the researcher should not influence the course of your study. That is, it should be objective. All right, my dear friends. So basically, these are the four fundamental principles of positivism. I repeat these principles once more. Number one, only that knowledge will be acceptable which, number one, is confirmed by senses. Number two, if we want to understand the laws governing a particular phenomenon, which is again generation of knowledge, then we should be able to generate hypotheses about it, and those hypotheses should be tested, and based on the test of the hypothesis regarding the phenomenon, we should be able to deduce the laws governing that particular phenomenon. Fourth thing, we can also derive laws through induction, that is by gathering facts which provide basis for generalizing the functioning of a particular phenomenon. Or more technically speaking, we gather the facts, and based on those facts, we are able to generate laws which govern the working of a particular phenomenon. And fourthly, science should be conducted in such a manner, our study should be conducted in such a manner that it is objective, it is value free, my dear friends. So, let us put it like this, that to generate the acceptable knowledge, we should be able to make a clear distinction between scientific statements and normative statements. Please note that. We should be able to distinguish. This is the crux of the positivist epistemological position. The crux is that there is a scientific statement which is derived either through induction or through deduction. And there is a normative statement, which is just your impression or a belief. I hope it is completely clear. So, dear friends, basic thing is, now, if we want to implement these principles of positivism, how do we go about implementing these principles of positivism? First, I said knowledge must be confirmed by senses. Number one. Number two, we should be able to generate hypotheses. And based on hypothesis, we should conduct some tests, test those hypotheses, and derive our knowledge based on that. Or we can generate knowledge with the help of inductive process, and that we should conduct our study in an objective manner. Now, if we have to fulfill these four conditions, for this only method that is left with us is very clearly, number one, we should be able to measure in quantitative form. That is, we should be able to gauge whatever we are studying, whether it is a social phenomenon or it is physical phenomenon. There must be measurement. If we are not able to measure a particular thing, then it is only a normative statement. It cannot be the scientific statement. That is the importance of this. And number two, the observation, as I said in the beginning, it should be objective. So the philosophical basis of the quantitative study is only one, and that is the epistemological position as defined by positivism. So this is the first aspect, my dear friends. Now let us go over to some other aspects relating to the quantitative study for the purposes of understanding quantitative analysis or quantitative research. What is the preoccupation of quantitative research? As I have said, first thing is measurement. It is a preoccupation. We are obsessed with measurement. And as I said in the beginning, something which cannot be measured does not exist. We are so strong and tough in terms of our commitment to measurement for generating acceptable knowledge. Second aspect relates to the causality in the quantitative analysis. Now, when we talk of causality, so we talk of, in that case, that cause precedes effect. That is what we try to study. But before I explain this, I would like to explain one more important thing about the quantitative analysis. Quantitative analysis can be considered with respect to two types of unit of analysis. One is called the idiographic analysis, and second is called the nomothetic analysis. In the idiographic analysis, we can perform quantitative analysis by studying individuals, single persons. And based on the study of single individuals in an appropriate manner in which measurement and observation are objective, we can arrive at acceptable knowledge. I will give you an example in this regard. And this is about the study of human mind, working of mind, and the studies that were done by Professor Roger Walcott Sperry. And he was given Nobel Prize in the year 1981. He was given Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine. And I would like to, as an example, present before you one of the idiographic studies done by him. Now, this is about the study of mind, how human beings think. Dr. Perry, that is Roger Walcott Sperry, wanted to study this. And he studied, to study this, what he did, he took up he wanted to study how the left hemisphere of the brain and right hemisphere of the brain function. And is there any link between them, how they are connected? He wanted to study this. Okay, so what he did, he took up some patients of epilepsy, patients who were very severely affected by epilepsy. He took those patients as his study, as a subject of his study. The patients, what happens in epilepsy? In epilepsy, a storm, electrical storm, starts in one side of the brain or one portion of the brain, and then it spreads in the entire brain. And as a result of that, the individual loses control over his or her body organs. And in very severe cases, what the doctors do is that a cord which is inside our brain, which connects the left hemisphere and right hemisphere of the brain, that cord is disconnected by the doctors. So it is observed in such patients that the right hemisphere and left hemispheres often functions independently of each other. Now, left hemisphere of the brain controls our right side and right visual field. The left hemisphere is concerned with logical reasoning and analysis. Right hemisphere is concerned with our understanding of the space and also the emotions. And this hemisphere, that is right hemisphere of our brain, controls our left side. Now these are disconnected. So these patients became subject for Professor Roger Walcott Sperry to study the understanding of the human beings, and his unit of analysis was idiographic. Now, take one example. In one case, he took up a patient who was a young boy. His cord, which was connecting the left hemisphere with the right hemisphere, that had been disconnected. So obviously, what is seen by the left eye is read by the right hemisphere. Now, this right hemisphere is one, it is concerned with space. It is concerned with emotions. The left hemisphere, which controls the right side. So This has the speech center. Even this one has the speech center. But the left hemisphere has the speech center, which is responsible for our talking. For example, now I am talking to you. I am talking to you with the help of the speech center, which is in my left hemisphere. Now see, this boy whose cord connecting the left hemisphere and right hemisphere was disconnected. That boy was studied, idiographic study. Unit of analysis is one individual. Observation and measurement is going on. How it is going on? Look at the, let me describe this. This boy's left side of the brain was shown, that is his right eye was shown a blank paper. So he asked, what is this? Because the speech center is there on the left side. So the researchers asked him a question. What do you want to become when you grow up? So this boy said, I want to become a draftsman. I want to draw maps when I grow up. Stop. Idiographic study. Objective of the study to study the relationship between two sides of the brain and behavior. Now, what they did after that, they closed the right eye. Now, his left eye only was open. Okay? The speech center is here, that is in the left side. But this eye from which the data is going, that is the right eye, from which the visual data is going into the left brain, that eye has been closed, so he cannot see anything. This side of the brain cannot read anything. All right? So then they asked him a question. What would you, earlier question was, what would you like to become? Now they asked him a question. When you grow up, what would you like to do? So now obviously, his perception, visual field here was closed. Okay, so he could not answer. The speech center was blocked. Okay, so he was given a number of letters, like in a Scrabble. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, large number of letters were given to him and he could pick those up. And his now right side of the brain was active. So left hand, which is controlled by the right side, that was active. So he started moving his left hand and he started picking the letters. And when he picked up those letters, the words that he wrote was automobile race. Now see this. Left side of the brain is answering the question, what you want to become. Answer was that he wants to become, as he grows up, a draftsman. But when they asked him what he would like to do, so answer was that it was that he wanted to do automobile race. This side of the brain is thinking something, another side of the brain is thinking something else altogether. Idiographic unit of study was there. Individual was studied completely. Then another study was conducted thereafter. And that became a very, very important study, idiographic in nature, my friends. That became a very significant study for our understanding of how human brain works. In this study, what they did, what the researchers did, this particular study was done by Gaza Niga. He was one of the students of Professor Roger Walcott Sperry. And what he did in this particular study, that he took up a similar patient whose cord, which was connecting the left side of the brain with the right side of the brain, that had been disconnected. And do you know what they did in this study? Very simple, idiographic unit. Single individual, they measured, they observed. A picture was shown to the left side of the brain through right eye. And the picture was of a chicken claw. That is the claw. Claw means what? The foot of the chicken. That was shown. Okay, and he was asked, what do you see? left side of the brain as the speech center answered by seeing that it is a chicken claw. Fine. Then left side of this left eye was closed, and this side of the right eye was closed, and left eye was left open, and to this left side he was shown picture of a snow field, a ground, a huge space in which the snow was there. That picture was shown. Obviously, it was shown to the left eye, and therefore it was observed by the right side of the brain. That's it. Then, after that, he was asked a question. What did you see? Okay, answer was obtained. Again, in the similar manner, because speech center here is not there, with the help of the letters. The answer obtained was that it is a snow field. After that, both the eyes were opened and he was asked a question. What do you see? The connection between the two. And for this purpose, for seeing the connection, this patient was shown a number of pictures, different objects. He was shown a shovel. He was shown a house. He was shown a road. Like this, a large number of objects were shown to him. And he was asked to pick up one of those to describe the relationship between the snow field, which was seen by right side of the brain, and the chicken claw, which was seen by the left side of the brain. And he picked up a shovel. He picked up something which is used for the purposes of throwing the snow away. And then he was asked, why did he pick that up? And the answer was given by him, which is a very interesting answer. Answer was that, see, there is a snow field, so that there must be a barn. In the barn, one has to reach there. For the purposes of reaching, there must be chicken inside the barn. And to approach the barn for the purposes of taking care of the chicken or to take them out, it is necessary to reach there. To reach there, snow has to be removed. For removing the snow, we need the shovel. Now, this is the story that has been created by him. And interestingly, the conclusion drawn by Professor Mazzaniga and Professor Roger Walcott Sperry was that there is one brain inside us which only receives data from outside, but there is something else also inside the mind which interprets it. And it became a very important finding. Now, I am not discussing that finding. I am just trying to show you one thing, that this approach that was followed here, objective observation, replicability, measurement of everything that was being done over there, and clear observation which is through the senses. That method was being followed in this idiographic study. And that idiographic study, where one individual was being studied thoroughly, that became a very important basis for our knowledge about the functioning of human mind. So, my dear friends, quantitative analysis study, therefore, can be idiographic in nature. Second one is what we call nomotherapy, in which we study groups. We do not collect data merely from one individual or one person only. We rather collect information from large mass of people, and we try to quantify it. And then we analyze this. This is my second point, dear friends, that I wanted to make, that about the quantitative analysis. Now, coming to the point that I had left earlier, that the occupation or preoccupation of the quantitative researchers is, we call it causality. We try to study the relationships by calculating correlations, by calculating regression coefficients and their significance. We try to, even for example, if we are doing the group analysis or grouping analysis through factor analysis and other tools like that. There also the fundamental basis is correlation. Remember this. Whether you're doing discriminant function analysis, correlation is fundamental. Even if you are doing what is very famous these days among Indian researchers, we call it structural equation modeling of different types we are doing. They are also the fundamental, the basic data on which we start working, on which we analyze further. That is correlation, a correlation table among the intercorrelation table among the variables. So correlation is the most important thing. And here, my dear friends, we have to understand it very clearly that causality is appropriately discerned. Now, as far as the quantitative studies are concerned, qualitative studies are concerned. In the qualitative studies, the focus is upon description. Here in quantitative studies, the focus is on causality, focus is on explanation. And that is why such studies are known as analytical studies. The studies which are done through the qualitative research, they are not known as analytical in nature. They are known as the descriptive analysis. All right. अब आप देखिए जरा. For example, you want to study, say for example, you want to study the impact of, say, caste prejudice, or you just want to study the topic of caste prejudice in India. Say you want to study this. Now, we are not interested in quantitative analysis in only describing the nature and types and forms of caste prejudice. We are actually interested in how much of it exists. What proportion of subjects, what proportions of different sets of population have how much of it. And we are also interested in what are the causes of caste prejudice if we are studying it. Is it because of the say personal characteristics, like say for example, I'm saying authoritarianism. So we would run a regression using this. Or it is because of the social factors like education, like social mobility, the place of residence, rural, urban, degree of, on what factors does the degree of caste prejudice exist? So we want to know the causes of that. And for this, we may use multiple regression. All right, and the significance of coefficients of different variables will tell us the extent to which the significance of these different variables. So this is one thing. And here, while we are studying, dear friends, about the causality aspect of it, and we are trying to quantify that causality with the help of different different statistical tools, we have to be very clear about it, that the relationships that we decipher with the statistical tools, these relationships should not be spurious. Just take example. For example, take an example. I find a very high correlation between ice cream sales and deaths due to drowning. Now, it is quite possible for me to arrive at this kind of correlation, or the regression coefficients can be significant, because ice cream sales are found to be highly correlated with drowning in water. Now, point is, my dear friends, apparently they are unconnected. The real reason is not that the ice cream sales is causing drowning or drowning is causing ice cream sales. It is quite possible that we have gathered these data belong to the summer season. In the summer season, ice cream sales go up, and in the summer season, we observe everywhere deaths from drowning are more than the deaths from drowning in the winter season. This is like it. It is very interesting. So here the causal variable is not either drowning or ice cream sales, but it is the season. Take another example. We find significant relationship between the number of PhDs and number of cows in towns and cities. Say, this is the situation. Now here is the presence of cows that is causing the PhDs. Actually, that is not the cause. Cause is rural and urban divide. In the urban areas, they say there is in the urban areas, cows are fewer, PhDs are more. In the rural areas, PhDs are less and cows are more. So we cannot generalize on that basis. Take one more example. Say shoe size and mathematical ability. We say there is a positive correlation between them. But is it really so? We have to be cautious about this. I'm giving very obvious kind of examples, my dear friend, so that this point gets registered in your mind. That here, if we find significantly positive relationship between shoe size and mathematical ability, so can we conclude that shoe size is causing the mathematical ability? Is that the cause? Or vice versa, that mathematical ability is causing the higher shoe size? Actually, the real variable here is age. As we grow up in age, our mathematical ability improves. And as we grow up in age, shoe size also increases. So a spurious correlation has been observed here. Now, these are some examples. Say, for example, very interesting study. Another one, a study was that the relationship between number of trucks employed for fighting the fire and the structural damage done to the building is positive. The more the number of trucks, fire trucks you employ to douse the fire, the greater will be the damage to the building. So should we make a policy that if we want to save the building, if there are no people inside there and we want to douse the fire, we should send fewer fire trucks, although it may take a longer time? Obviously, it is a fallacious conclusion. Reason is, more fire trucks are employed when intensity of fire is more. And when intensity of fire is more, then structural damage to the building will also be more. So it is not the number of fire trucks which are responsible for the structural damage to the building. It is the intensity of fire which is there. एक और example बताता हूँ. A mistake we often do, we quantitative researchers often do this kind of mistake. A study was conducted somewhere in early 90s. The study was a serious study. The study was that to find out, the hypothesis was the relationship between the positive expression of positive emotion by the salesperson and amount of sales was positive. Now, a lot of data was collected as a result of this from the stores to find out positive expression of the emotions. Like, for example, you welcome a salesperson, you attend to the salesperson, and you are always very positive about expressing everything that was there. And degree amount of sales, quantity of sales, both were measured. Regression was run, and it was found that the relationship was significant, but the relationship was found to be negative, which means it is an atrocious and surprising kind of finding. And what is this? That if you are smiling, if the salesperson is expressing positive emotions, the sales is not rising. Instead of rising, sales actually is falling. What is this? Now, these people did not publish this study at this stage. They tried to study the literature. They tried to find out what could be the possible causes for this. They even increased their sample. Some more data were added after that, but the finding remained the same. Negative correlation, negative relationship, negative and significant relationship between expression of positive emotion by the salesperson and the quantity of sales clocked by the store. Now, they said, okay, we are not able to find the relationship. Let us do the qualitative study. And what they did then, they started visiting these stores, started personally interviewing and talking to the salespersons, started observing the behavior of the salespeople from a distance, how they are talking, behaving, and whether they started gathering the data, information in a qualitative manner, whether the person, what happens to the person when the person enters into the store, interacts with the salesperson, and whether the person finally goes to the counter where the payment for the sale has to be made or not. So this kind of the study they conducted, and you know what they observed? They observed that in all the large stores, the pressure of work on these people was so high that actually they expressed positive emotion after the sales had taken place rather than before the sales. And they reported both the type of results in their results. But the commitment was to find out the explanation. Now, explanation, understand one more point here. That quantitative analysis, though provides us results in a very, very precise manner, but we must make an effort that the causes are appropriately identified. The spurious results are not reported. Now, in this regard, in quantitative analysis, there are two major fallacies that we face. The first fallacy is what we call technically the ecological fallacy. Now, what is this ecological fallacy? The ecological fallacy is that it is an assumption. Please notice, ecological fallacy is the assumption that something learned about the phenomenon. Please see, we learn something about a group, and based on what we have learned about the group, we try to generalize about the individuals. This is called ecological fallacy. जैसे एक एग्जांपल देते हैं, छोटा सा एग्जांपल. Say for example, voting has taken place in a certain constituency and the candidate is a woman. Now, we try to find out whether young people voted for her or old people voted for her. We want to know this. So what we do, that we gather the data from each of the voting set, voting area, say voting booth, suppose it is available, or constituency wise, we obtain the data. And we find out that the constituency or the booths where the polling had taken place, the booths where proportion of younger people was more, those constituencies had voted in large numbers for this particular women candidate. And based on this, we arrive at a conclusion. We say that younger people are voting for the women and older population is not voting for the women. Please understand. Let me explain again. If there is a woman candidate, for that woman candidate, we have obtained the data for each polling booth. And we have found that in the polling booths where young population is more, in those booths, the voting in favor of her was large. So we conclude that younger people voted for the women candidate. So this is a very typical case of ecological fallacy. Now here what we are studying, we are actually studying the population of the polling booths. Yes, population distribution is such that there are younger people. But is it not possible that older people in these populations had actually voted for her? We do not have data about the voting by the younger people. We do not have data on voting by the older people in the polling booth. What we have data on? We have data on population composition of the polling booths. There are some polling booths, or there are a large number of polling booths where population happen to be such that younger people happen to be more there, where she won. And we arrive at this conclusion. But it is not so. This will be a wrong ecological fallacy. For example, this will be an ecological fallacy. एक और example देखिए. Say for example, we say there are more suicide rates in high income districts of the country. So we conclude higher the people, higher the income of the people, higher is the likelihood of the suicide by the people. This will be again an ecological fallacy, something which belongs to the group. Conclusion about we are trying to arrive at conclusions regarding the individuals on the basis of information that we have about huge quantum of groups. So this is one fallacy that needs to be avoided. Then there is one more fallacy in case of the quantitative research that we arrive at, my dear friends. And that is, we call it reductionism. And what is reductionism? Reductionism is that we try to explain a particular phenomenon by using as fewer number of variables as possible. Just an example, these days IPL has been going on. So we predict, or large number of people predict, the performance of IPL teams. And how they predict? They predict on the basis of ability of individual players who are there inside the team. Now question is it correct? One variable we have identified, and based on one variable we are trying to generalize about the team as a whole. But this could be fallacious. How it could be fallacious? Because ability of the individual players is not the only variable which is responsible for the success. There could be other variables such as teamwork, the strategy, the coaching they have received, the kind of, let's say, facilities that this particular team had for its players when they were practicing, the kind of finances that these people had and they had offered to their team members. All this could have an influence on these variables. But reductionism, but it does not mean that reductionism does not really mean anything. But it may not give you the complete answer. Take a study, for example, I like to quote one study. It was a very famous study, Edward W. Wilson. Edward W. Wilson was the scholar, and he tried to explain the altruistic behavior of human beings in terms of the genetics. And what he found, this is known as the neo-Darwinistic study, study in neo-Darwinism. He said he found that people have an inclination, genetic makeup of the individuals could be such that the people could sacrifice themselves for the greater good of their species or large number of people around them. And the reason for that, he says, lies in the genes. And he says during the evolutionary process, it was possible that some people learned to sacrifice their personal interest or even sacrifice themselves for the greater good of the larger mass of people. Now, thing is that this is a very typical example of reductionism, where altruistic behavior, the behavior of kindness, behavior of compassion, that is sought to be explained through one variable only, that is the genetic makeup, my dear friends. But I would say that yes, there is an effort in the direction of reductionism for performing the quantitative research. Nonetheless, we should be very cautious while we are reducing the number of variables. So in such cases, we should study the error term, what is not explained, and what is its quantum, and what is the contribution to the R square by the addition of new variables. So all those kind of things should be taken care of. Here, my objective is not to go into the study of specific statistical tools. I only wanted to cover some of the general aspects which relate to the philosophies and which relate to some of the mistakes that we commit. And here, one word I would like to say, particularly in the social sciences, one other preoccupation we have in quantitative analysis, and that is replication by inference. But from the point of view of the researchers, replication, though is very much required, it is not very inspiring. Reason being, replicated research quite often is not considered as original research. And good journals, they very often reject such research. Although replication is something which is very, very important in quantitative analysis, because testability and replicability is an important feature of the positivistic research. Now, these were, my dear friends, some of the ideas that I had this time to share with you in respect of the understanding of quantitative research. I hope I have been able to throw some ideas for as a food for thought for you, and I'm sure it should benefit you in carrying out your researches. With these words, I would like to thank you all.